interest is still on Grandpa.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm gonna try to share this screen. Oh, hey Gary, what's up?
Not much. How is
Oh,
everybody?
hey there.
Hey.
Thomas,
Good.
hello?
Hello.
Cool. So last week we made it up to section 3, which is where they actually present the Grandpa algorithm. And I felt like I was just starting to make some like basic sense of like what might be happening, but I definitely didn't feel like I had a clear understanding of like what you do to be a validator in Grandpa. And I think I'm still don't have it like totally clear, but I have enough of it that maybe we can start to work through like, you know, simulating a game and deciding like what would be legal versus not legal to do. So, well, let me just flip immediately to this example game. So I set one up here where we've got 4 validators, Alice, Bob, Charlie, and Dave. And I chose 4 because that's the fewest we need if we want to actually tolerate a Byzantine validator. Because the rule was we have to have less than a third validators Byzantine. And so if one of these guys is Byzantine, that's only a quarter, and then we'll be good to go.
Okay.
And yeah. So although I don't feel like I'm ready to actually play a game where one of them's Byzantine yet, but if we decide we get to that point, we're set up to do it. So it's the same blockchain, at least the beginning of the same blockchain drawn for each one of these validators. And so like if we just look at Alice's, G is the Genesis block, and then there's 3 other blocks that exist somewhere in the chain here. And then I've annotated it with a bunch of different things. So I'm interested to know whether this like notation is helpful and like totally interested in revising it if we think that's, I'm not claiming that it's like the best it can be. So wide open to suggestions. So I've annotated some of the blocks like, does my mouse pointer show up? Not really. So let's do this. Like this V1 right here, since it's in Bob's color, so Bob is like the blue validator, that indicates that the V indicates that it's a pre-vote as opposed to a pre-commit, and the 1 indicates that it's Bob's pre-vote in round 1. And so the notation in the paper is that they would indicate this with like V sub 1 comma Bob, but I'm omitting the comma Bob and just using the blue color to indicate that it's Bob's pre-vote in round 1. And then, so now we can look at Bob's perspective here too, and it's similar. It definitely starts out the same, but like there's another block that Bob's heard of, and he's also heard of some more votes. So he's got like V1 is in orange, so that means that's Dave's vote. So Bob has heard of Dave's vote already.
Quick question, why are we calling it a pre-vote?
Yeah, good question. So in the paper, they talk about 2 different kinds of votes, and one is the pre-vote and the other one is unintuitively called the pre-commit. So there's never any like, you know, it's not like a vote follows the pre-vote. Oh, I hear some, there we go. And it's not like there's a commit that follows the pre-commit, but that's just the terminology that I took from the paper. And they talked about these 2 sets here. Let VRV and CRV be the set of pre-votes. The R stands for what round and the V stands for what validator or voter, I guess. And then C is the pre-commits.
Hey, can you just remind us what the pre-vote and pre-commit actually means? I don't think I understood that last time.
What's up, Isaac?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah. So I don't know for sure what the 2 mean exactly, but what I do know for sure is that the pre-vote comes first and the pre-commit comes later.
Okay.
And then in the algorithm here, they're described.
I have this faint memory of you saying something along the lines of each validator only does 1, or maybe I'm mistaken.
So the way they wrote it up in the paper, you can have like some subset of the validators are pre-voters in each round and some subset are pre-committers in each round.
Okay.
But so far, I was hoping that we could use the simplifying assumption that every validator pre-votes and pre-commits in every round, and then maybe generalize that later.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I also can share my working understanding or like hypothesis of what these might be, but I only feel like 70% sure that this is right. But my understanding is that the pre-vote is each validator coming out and saying, like, based on the blocks that I've seen with my own eyes, this is the best one. And because it says they, under step 3, it says they pre-vote for the head of the best chain containing their estimate of what might have been finalized in the previous round. And then there's this special case for if the primary did something special in the previous step. So in our, yeah, go ahead.
Can you have in one round mixed votes from pre-votes and pre-commits?
Yeah, like can some of the pre-commits be coming out while there are still other pre-votes that you haven't seen yet, you mean?
Yeah, that also.
Oh, yeah. So I think the answer to that is yes. I'm not totally sure about that either, but I think that's the case. But then what was the other question?
And this is because some validator can have more messages and he can start sending pre-commits. And some other validator maybe is in another round before that, or
yeah, I know for sure that they don't have to all be on the same round at the same time. That's true. Yeah,
I see.
Definitely.
Validators are aware of the rounds, right?
Yes, that's right. A validator always knows what round they're in, and whenever they see a vote, part of the information contained in the vote is what round it was cast in, like what round it belongs to.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So my, like I was starting to say, my working understanding is that the pre-votes are basically like just your opinion based on the blocks that you've seen, and then the pre-commits is when you also consider what other people have voted for. But now
do you only pre-commit a vote when you're confident about some kind of finality?
Yeah, so step 4 is where we're talking about pre-commits. So the voter if V is a voter for the pre-commit step, so we're saying for now that all of our voters are in the pre-commit step for this round, then you wait until we have this condition that the 2/3 ghost rule based on the pre-votes you've seen is a descendant of or the same as whatever you estimated to possibly be finalized in the previous round. So this condition, I actually haven't seen a case where this condition doesn't hold yet, but I think it's because I've always started near the beginning of the chain so far. So like, just to make this super concrete, ER-1, when we're starting at the beginning of the chain, we say that the genesis block is, so I've indicated it as E0, and then the comma Alice is implicit because it's pink. So that means that Alice's estimate for what was finalized in round 0 is the genesis block. And that's like the initial condition that we're going to start with.
You said for pre-votes, you're only looking for messages that you've seen, or
yeah. So my hypothesis is that with pre-votes, so the descriptions here in number 3 is about what you pre-vote for, but my intuition is that it's based only on the blocks and not on other people's votes that you've heard. Oh, I should say one thing that's a lot different here than it was in CBC Casper is that, like, in CBC Casper, creating a block and voting are like tied all up together. Whereas in Grandpa, the messages we're passing are just votes. They're like metadata that you attach to blocks, and they're not blocks themselves.
I see.
Yeah.
And that's because it has nothing to do with the actual block production, right? This is just a finalization gadget or whatever.
Exactly. The blocks are flowing in from something that we've abstracted away to the point that it just happens. We just hear about them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So okay, so it said, so here's the instructions in step 3 for how you're supposed to pre-vote. So you wait until either it's been 2 times. So this capital T is like just some predefined and agreed upon time period. I think it goes in the Genesis block. So it's got to be at least 2 of these time units since you started this round. And step 1 is when you can start the round. So either you've waited long enough, or the previous round. Oh no! Oh, sorry. The current round R is completable. Then you broadcast a pre-vote, and you pre-vote for the head of the best chain containing your estimate for the previous round, unless we received a block from the primary. So in step 2, the primary can optionally like broadcast some block that's their own estimate from the previous round. And so the way I'm taking this is that, like, you're going to pre-vote for the head of the best chain containing your estimate for the previous round. And then there's this other thing that might happen, which is that, like, if the primary gives you another block and you're like, oh yeah, that is even better than my estimate, like you primary have a, later estimate than I did, then we're just going to use their estimate instead.
How do you quantify a better estimate?
Yeah, in that case, I meant later. But I will say they use this phrase in here sometimes, best chain, which I didn't ever see like precisely defined. So I've just been using like longest chain as my heuristic there.
Yeah, like the Casper rules.
Yeah.
And you're looking at blocks or the votes?
Yeah, for pre-voting, that you're looking at blocks.
Only on blocks. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a little bit of both, because that ER-1V, that depends on the votes that you've seen in the previous round. So basically I'm saying like, let me start at this thing, ER-1V. That's my estimate for the previous round. So when we very first start, that's the Genesis block, but later it'll be something a little more general than that. And we say, let's start there, and then let's vote for the best chain that descends from that estimate block. Pre-vote for the best chain that descends from that estimate block.
I see.
Right. Okay. And so let's look at one of these games for a sec. So I just started this one out, and I'm hoping that maybe we can like continue to sort of grow this example and talk through like what might be valid votes and what might not be. So right now the situation is that every one of the validators has E, their estimate so far for round 1, and G, the ghost rule based on these pre-votes, as being the same block. So like for Alice, that's block 3. And for Bob, that's block 4. And I think what's going to happen is that we're going to say round 1, like Alice sees that round 1 is completable whenever this G, the ghost rule based on the pre-votes, actually moves on further down the chain and leaves E behind. So for example, in some future state, like maybe we'll have a bunch more blocks in here, and it'll be the case that like E1 gets left here, but G moves on to a later block. And I'm pretty sure that's what tells Alice that round 1 is completable, but it hasn't happened yet. And I got that from, so this last sentence right here. If either EVR is an strictly ancestor of this ghost rule thing, so they can't be the same in that case, it means that definitely the ghost block comes later. Or it's impossible for the pre-commits, which we haven't really talked about, to have a supermajority for any children of the ghost block. Then we say that the round is completable. So I guess what I just described as like, oh, I even wrote it here. G has moved on without E. That's what I was trying to describe as like, this ghost rule calculated block is strictly a descendant of E. Whoops. Oh, shoot. Sorry about that.
And
Yeah,
can
so-
we look at the definition of G again?
Yeah, totally. So that's this last partial paragraph here.
You're searching for common ancestor, right?
What was
Which is
that?
finalized. It's searching for common ancestor, which is finalized, right?
I don't know. I don't know if it's finalized, but definitely supermajority. Those might be synonyms. I'm not
Okay.
sure. Oh, well, in fact, we're not saying finalized here because we're just taking any arbitrary set of votes as, right? So this G function takes in some set of votes and tells you, wait, what was it? The block with the high.
Yeah, this block B. This block B is definitely will not change, right? When you have supermajority, this will not change.
It can change as more votes come in.
Oh, it can change.
It can move later. It can't change to like a sibling or move back up to an ancestor, but it can continue to move down as a descendant.
Okay, this makes sense.
Yeah. So in fact, maybe we should do an example like that too. So let's say like we have some blocks here and we have some votes. And so I'll just show like maybe the blue validate. Let's say we've got 4 validators again. And we've got 3 votes like this. So right now, I think, let's see, in order to have, oh, wow. What was the definition again? The highest block number such that S has a supermajority for B. So if we just look at this diagram that I've drawn so far, what would G be?
I think it can only be the first one because, well, so that last vote or the vote on the highest block height is also a vote for lower block heights that are in the same chain, right?
Yes, that's right. And so maybe we can draw those into, like that's what you were getting at, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So
Yep.
so my reasoning was like, okay, it can't be the highest block height because it only has a single vote out of 3. That's not a supermajority. 2 out of 3 is just on the cusp of supermajority, but it's not. But 3 out of 3 is definitely supermajority. So I think block 1 has to be it there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Sorry, but very looking at the votes.
I'm indicating the votes with these colored hashes next to them.
Okay.
So like the orange validator has voted for block 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then implicitly also for all of its ancestors.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So then the point we were trying to get at was like, oh, so there might even be more blocks down here that we just don't have votes for yet. That still wouldn't change G. But then like, you know, what color didn't I use? Let's say the yellow validator comes in and votes down here for block 5.
Mm-hmm.
So now did it move? Oh, it moved it just a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
So G
2.
moves, yeah, down to 2.
So what's also interesting here is that if all of a sudden you hear about like 3 blocks at the same time and say 4 has all 3 votes, then you would just skip to 4. You could theoretically skip from G pointing to 1 to G pointing to block 4.
Oh, yeah, right. Like it doesn't have to go one at a time.
Yeah, I think that, or that's what the sentence is saying.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Mm.
Yeah, in fact, oh yeah. So like let's say let's make another set of votes here and try that again. So let's say like yeah, how would that work? So let's say we had like green wait, actually I'm not sure if that does work. How can we skip? Oh, it's hard. I think it's hard when we only have a handful of validators because you have to have 3 out of 4 to get the supermajority.
Is this a question of how many votes you can have in one round?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that does make a difference. I was trying to, Nicole, I thought I agreed with you, but now I'm not sure I do. like we showed that G could move from block 1 to 2, and then I was trying to think of a scenario where G could move forward more than one block at a time.
Are these pre-votes?
When we're talking about the context of the 2/3 ghost rule, it's just any set of votes. But yeah, when we get to Grandpa, we're going to run G on the set of pre-votes.
Because pre-votes specifically.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say pre-votes have the condition that you have to vote. Each voter has to vote in each round, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So if it were only pre-votes, then it would make sense that you couldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wait, does it? What are you thinking, Jay?
Right, because if you have to vote in each round, then you're either going to vote for the next block or you're not going to vote for the next block and therefore not its ancestor.
Oh, yeah, not its descendant.
Not its sibling, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, how about like what if we have a scenario like this though? What if we have like a bunch of blocks and right, G can I forgot about this. G doesn't have to return anything. G can return nil if no block has a supermajority. Yeah.
I found a blurb on the whether you have to vote sequentially or not.
Do you want to show something?
Yeah, I pasted it in the chat for this Zoom. Or I don't want to show. You can.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice. The key insight behind Grandpa is the idea of incorporating a blockchain structure.
So rather than voting on a single block, we allow participants to vote on the highest block they think is valid. And the algorithm transitively applies the vote to all ancestors of that block. So you can skip blocks with G and it applies transitively. That's what that sentence was saying.
So in a sense, you can wait a little and new blocks are coming and you just vote on some newest block. And
Yep.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
I guess hence pseudo instant finality, but not really.
Okay. So you're pretty much up to speed on, on what I had figured out here. And so I was thinking like, okay, what are some things that could potentially happen in a game of Grandpa? And then like, let's try to weed it down to some subset of things that are legal to happen. And so like one thing that I think can happen at basically any time is that the block production mechanism gives us a new block. So I think we can just draw yellow blocks on here, like pretty much anytime we feel like it, totally disconnected from what's happening in Grandpa. And then we can also have validators cast pre-votes and pre-commits, remembering that whenever we post new information about pre-votes and pre-commits, we might have to update some of this other metadata, like the current location of G or the current location of E.
Sorry, when you say new blocks can just pop up everywhere, is this completely true? I mean, is this completely independent of the votes? It can be, right? Somehow.
I think we have a loose dependence because what we don't want is for the block production mechanism to be making blocks that don't even descend from our last finalized block. So like if Grandpa finalizes some block somewhere in the chain, then I think the block production mechanism is supposed to only produce blocks, downstream of there. But I think other than that, they can be built anywhere and at any time.
So you must ask someone, what is the last finalized block? So you are you calling this G when you want to produce new block?
Well, so remember, it's not Alice, Bob, Charlie, and Dave that are going to be producing new blocks here. They're the people playing the finality game. Some other block production mechanism is just going to be coming in and saying like, hey, guess what? Here's a new block.
But this who will produce new block, he must ask someone, what is the valid chain?
Yeah, yes. That's right.
Maybe not the absolutely valid. I mean,
but just the last finalized.
Yeah, and not the wrong one.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
that's right.
Not exactly the concrete one. This is like a difficult question, but
Yeah, there are places that are forbidden to build new blocks, namely ones that don't descend from the last finalized block.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
So that's a great point. So we're early enough in this game that the last finalized block is still Genesis. So I guess in this case it can be truly anywhere, but yeah, in general, I think you're right. They can't go. You can't have these long range reorganizations.
because I'm wondering if you create a new block and then seconds later you find out, oh, this is like wrong block, wrong pattern that I created a new block.
Yeah, yeah. Like what would happen? You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you would just. It's kind of like seeing your block orphaned off in a probabilistic consensus. You know, like in Bitcoin, you see your block orphaned off, and you're like, oh, damn, all that work was for nothing. And I think it's kind of maybe the same thing here.
Okay, this is like opposite on finality, right? You're finally no, this is the wrong chain.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the sad version of finality.
It's co-finality.
Yeah.
Oh
exactly.
yeah. Oh yeah, great.
Yeah. Okay. So far in this scenario, every one of the grandpa validators has cast their pre-vote, although not every validator has heard all of the pre-votes. So like, for example, Dave pre-voted for block 4. Alice hasn't heard that yet. And in fact, Alice hasn't even heard of block 4 itself, let alone the vote for it. So maybe just to have some fun here, let's say like, okay, Alice hears of block 4. That's something that can happen. And maybe the block producers also come up with block 5, which is growing here. And maybe Charlie and Dave hear of it. Okay, but now we have to decide like, or I guess we don't have to, but like it would probably be good for our brains to make an actual grandpa play here. So I guess maybe someone has to like cast a pre-commit at this point. So the rules for pre-commits were if you're a voter in the pre-commit step, which we're saying everybody is, then wait until G is either a descendant of your estimate from the previous round or is the estimate from the previous round. So I think that condition is met for all of our validators. And we've either waited a long enough time or round R is completable, or it's impossible for VR to have a supermajority for any child of G. So wait, yeah. What do you want to see?
I'm just reading the third point. If V is a voter for pre-vote, so the V is not necessarily a voter in this round, or it can be, or it must be.
I think in general the idea is that some subset of all validators are selected deterministically, either pseudo randomly or just by rotating to be voters in the pre-vote, and another subset, which might be the same or overlapping or totally disjoint, are selected deterministically to be the pre-committers in that round.
Okay, so it's not important really for.
Yeah, for ours, I think we're going to say that everybody is in every one of them.
Oh yeah, you said it. Okay.
Yeah. Because we only have 4, and if we make it smaller, I'm not really sure if we're still tolerant, and and I definitely don't want to make it bigger.
So just from my understanding, for round R to be completable, that also incorporates this impossibility for the pre-votes to have a supermajority on any child of the G of E thing, right?
Yeah, so I thought that same thing, but there's actually, maybe you're exactly right. That's up here, I guess, in the bottom of that.
Yeah.
if either V,
Oh no, sorry, it's the pre-commits.
yeah, right. This,
Have the
yeah,
supermajority.
that's the
Okay.
only difference, right? Because down in
Yeah.
item 3 down here, they're talking about still the pre-votes, and then up here it was the pre-commits.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So okay, so maybe we can just answer this question. So like I'll flip back to the game in a second and we'll look from Alice's perspective and we'll say, is it impossible for CRV to have a supermajority for any children? So the children would be stuff that came off down here somewhere. Oh, but I think it's totally possible, right? She hasn't even seen any pre-commits yet.
Yeah, and Alice should definitely vote after the 2T, right? If she doesn't see any other messages.
Yeah, she should make her pre-commit, you mean?
Pre-vote.
Alice already pre-voted. This is her pre-vote.
Oh, I was thinking for round 4.
Oh, for future rounds?
I was thinking that we were talking about the round 4, like a new round, or.
Oh, so well, we're on round 1 right now. That's what all the subscript 1s mean. So, but maybe you're thinking about this block 4.
Oh yeah, I was thinking on the block. Yeah, the number is in the number of the block, and this is the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, so I'm kind of trying to indicate round numbers with subscripts on the votes.
On the votes, okay.
And so another thing that's tripping me out, or is hard for me to keep straight in my head, is that like when we were doing CBC Casper, people were like, we were always talking about latest messages, right? So you're just constantly updating your vote. Like I'm always tempted to say stuff like, oh, so at this point, maybe Alice moves her vote over to here. But that's not how it works in Grandpa, because once you've cast your vote for, your pre-vote or your pre-commit for a specific round, that's it. You can't change it after that. Yeah.
So I'm looking for the definition of completable right now. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I think it's right above this box. It's this like last little last 2 lines on the page before the box, right under heading 3.
Okay. Wait, sorry, where is it?
It's are you looking at my screen right now?
Yeah.
I think these two lines, if all these conditions, then we say that VC is completable.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see. So the estimate. Go ahead.
So is the completable like just confirmation that this block can be finalized in the future?
That's such a good question. I don't know. I know for sure one thing that completable means, maybe not the only thing, is that a validator can start the next round. So if you see a particular round so that's step 1 in the algorithm. If a voter V can start round 1 when the previous round is completable and you've finished voting in the previous round. So I don't know if completable implies anything directly about finality or not.
But when you search for, when you check for if round is complete.
Yeah.
Oh, round is completable, not the block. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm not.
What?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking what does it mean to have a round? This is like something virtual, right? You have a votes, you have a blocks, and the round is.
Yeah, I don't think the round is tied like specifically to any number of votes or anything like that. But a round involves each voter in the, each voter in the set of pre-voters casting a pre-vote, and each voter in the set of pre-committers casting a pre-commit.
And you said this is only one vote. So you can
that's one of the points of a round, is that it like partitions so that you can't recast a vote in that round.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
The top sentence on the paper that the page that we're looking at right now, it says something about finality.
Oh. In other words, a round R is completable when our estimate chain contains everything that could have been finalized in round R, which makes it possible to begin the next round R plus 1. Yeah. Okay.
So does it specifically say somewhere that you need a pre-commit in a round?
That's a good question. Yeah, it says in step 1, a voter can start the next round, or some round, when the previous round is completable and that same validator has cast votes in all previous rounds where they're a voter. So I think that means like if you were selected to be a pre-committer in round 6, you can't start any future round until you've cast both, or until you've cast your pre-commit in round 6.
Mm.
Yeah. Which I think makes sense. Like, we don't want validators moving on to future rounds until they've wrapped up their work on previous rounds.
So completable is more of like a relative concept. Like one person can reach the completable state of a round while another person hasn't.
Yeah. So here they say is completable, like it's a global thing, but up above the italicized phrase is V sees that round R is completable.
Yeah, they're always talking about completable from the perspective of a particular voter.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So we in our example, we've got everybody having cast their pre-votes. So let's see if anyone's eligible to cast their pre-commit now. They wait until GVR is either the same as or a descendant of E from the previous round. So right now, for every validator, G is a descendant of E0, which was the Genesis block. And, oh yeah, okay, right. So one thing is we might just have to sit here and wait till enough time has passed. But also we can short circuit the waiting if round R is completable, or it's impossible for VR to have a supermajority for any children. So let's maybe focus on those two. And so we're gonna flip to the game and we're gonna say, for any of these validators, since they all satisfy this condition, do any of them either see that the round is completable, or that it's impossible for VR to have a supermajority for these children? And what did completable mean again? Completable means, completable means that G has moved on without E, or it's impossible for C to have a supermajority for any children. Okay. So I think we're looking for G having moved on without E, which we know is not the case for any of the validators, or impossibility of the pre-commits to have a supermajority for any children of G, or impossibility for VR to have a supermajority for any of the children.
So everybody only gets one pre-vote per round, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so that third condition can't happen.
So the third condition, it's impossible for VR to have a supermajority for any children of G. I'm thinking about if you're the first voter and you haven't seen the other votes yet.
Or do
you mean in our game specifically?
Yeah, I mean in our game specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking for anyone who says that like VR might have a supermajority for a child of G. Yeah, well, definitely not Bob, Charlie, or Dave. They see all these other votes up above. And no, it's still possible for Alice. If Alice sees Dave's vote come in either for block 3 or somewhere downstream of block 3.
But how it will go on the first round? So you see Genesis and, for example, Alice cast a vote,
Yeah.
and she didn't see any other votes. And what can she say for her vote?
Yeah. So, oh, you're saying like at the very, very beginning, like all she sees is Genesis?
Yeah. She needs some kind of votes on Genesis, right?
That's a good question. Part of me is thinking it's not useful to vote on Genesis because it already starts as your estimate from the previous round, from round 0. So what I did struggle with starting the way I started this game in my head was I just created a block first and then I had someone pre-vote for that block. But I don't know that that's the only way to do it. So the conditions for when you can cast your pre-vote is, oh, sure, if you wait long enough, or round R is complete, the current round is. Oh, yeah, I took this to mean, I was thinking of this as like, look, dude, you can't just go voting all willy-nilly. Like, give enough time for some stuff to happen. Or if you get there and you see that this round is already completable, then you might be falling behind. So go ahead and vote without waiting.
That makes sense.
So the instructions are pre-vote for the head of the best chain containing, in our case, the Genesis block, or this block that the primary from the previous round might have broadcast. But there was no primary in the previous round in this case because this is the first round. So I was working through this and I basically so I think I constructed block 1 and then Bob pre-voted for it. And then around the same time, I constructed block 2 and 3. Like you could imagine, if the block production mechanism is proof of work, maybe those 2 blocks got mined about the same time. And Alice and Charlie sort of voted for opposite ones of them. And then we started to get this long chain descending from 2, and Dave voted somewhere in there. And some info hasn't fully propagated yet. Like I guess at some point it becomes reasonable to say like maybe Dave has seen Bob's pre-vote. So I think we're ready to have someone pre-commit. I think Bob is ready to pre-commit at this point because the conditions for pre-committing are that G is a descendant or equal to the estimate from the previous round. Let's see if I got that right. Yeah, G is a descendant or equal to the estimate from the previous round. And from Bob's perspective, it's impossible for V to have a supermajority for any child of G. So from Bob's perspective, Bob has seen the entire set V. He knows that no more votes will come in. So it's impossible for V to give a supermajority of something that descends from his G down here because they've already voted up higher. Does that seem like it meets the definition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's just try it and see what happens. So we're going to put C1 there, and maybe Alice has heard it, and maybe Charlie's heard it. Nice. Now what? I guess Dave is in basically the same situation. Oh, what are you supposed to pre-commit for again? Broadcast a pre-commit for G, for whatever your 2/3 ghost rule on the pre-vote said. Oh yeah, right. So earlier I was saying I think that the pre-vote is just based on the blocks, and that's why they're saying the head of the best chain containing this estimate. And then 4 is where you're actually like reflecting on what other people have voted for. So when you cast your pre-commit, now you're not just voting for like the best chain that descends from some particular block. Now you're actually voting for the thing that you've seen other people pre-vote for. So, okay, so Charlie has seen enough pre-votes that I think he can pre-commit. Oh no, what happened to my C? Oh, there. Uh, C1, and maybe Dave has heard it. So I'm curious, like, if anyone can. Oh, right. So one of the conditions to start the next round is that you have to have cast both your votes in the previous round. So Bob and Charlie have done that now. I wonder if they're eligible to start round two. Okay, so it means that the previous round has to be completable, and they've cast their votes.
And one of the requirements for completable is that you can't have a supermajority be a descendant for the commits, right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Time check here. We got 7 minutes. Was there a second topic that we were going to look at?
So Tomislav, you're what was the guy's name? Bruno?
Bruno, yeah.
No, that's next hour. I'm talking about for Casper.
Yep.
Did Isaac have something, or who had something? Somebody had something. Never mind.
Isaac was going to show some K-framework stuff. I think that next hour, though, right? Or what were you thinking, Isaac?
Yeah, it depends on how much time Bruno wants. It sounded like you wanted to do 45 minutes, so I mean, I can show you guys some stuff after that. I assume he's going to show up in like roughly 7 minutes, so
yeah,
we'll see.
Yep.
All right.
Cool. Isaac, is there something you could do in 7 minutes? Would you prefer to do it now?
That's
pretty fast, right?
That's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I'm prepared enough to give you the 7 minute version.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to show you.
That takes a little more brain power.
Yeah. Well, and also like having windows open and stuff, which I don't.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Okay, cool. Well, let's see if any validators can see round one as being completable. So so this is an or condition. If either GVR has moved on past EVR, or it's impossible for CVR to have a supermajority.
Okay.
So for Bob and Charlie, GV and EV. Right now I have them marked as the same spot. There's so many definitions, it's a little hard to internalize all of them. I forget what the definition of E was.
Yeah.
Whoops. E is V's estimate of what might have been finalized in the previous round, given by the last block in the chain with head GV, for which it's still possible for CVR to have a supermajority. And yeah. Okay. The last I assume that last block means most recent block is how I'm taking that, like highest block height, farthest down my direct drawing. With head. Oh yeah. The last block in the chain with head of G, for which it's possible for CVR to have a supermajority. So I think that means that we can never, by definition, can never move E further down. We can only move E back up, because as more of these C votes come in, it might be impossible for previous blocks to have a supermajority. So, in fact, we're going to see that super soon. So let's get some of these votes over to Alice. This will be a good thing to end on. Okay. So Alice is now in this situation, I think, because I think Alice, once she sees these two pre-commits, I think she has to move E1 back up to here. Whoops. Uh-oh, the rating's getting a little glitchy. And I think, so, okay, the reason I did that is because this E, the estimate of what might have been finalized in round one, was defined as the most recent block in the chain whose head is G. So for Alice, that we're talking about this chain right here. and we're talking about the most recent block in that chain. Oh my God, the whole thing just crashed.
No.
Oh,
Okay,
it's back.
good recovery. That wasn't so bad. What were we talking about? So, oh yeah, right. So it's no longer possible for block 3 to get a supermajority of the pre-commits in round 1 because it looks like they're all coming down over here on a different chain. So, okay, so great. So let's do that. And so now, like, what is it acceptable for Alice to pre-commit now?
Wait, can we look at the definition of E again?
Yeah, definition of E.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that starts at this paragraph here.
Given the last block in the chain with head G for which it is possible. So it's okay that E is above G. It just doesn't really make sense to put it below.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then, oh yeah, and so I think that means for Alice, if either, so that means Alice sees round 1 as being completable now because E is strictly an ancestor of G. So she met the first condition. And so we say that she sees round R as completable.
Yeah, I think maybe even before she moved her estimate, it was already completable for her because she saw two of those pre-commits, right? So it was already not possible to have a supermajority on any child.
She saw, yeah, oh yeah, you're saying even apart from moving E up, just
Right.
seeing Claire's pre-commit already says, oh, well, we're never going to get supermajority in the pre-commits from block 3, so
right, because I need 3 and I can only possibly get 2, so it's already done.
Okay, so that's super interesting. Alice was able to decide that round 1 was completable because she was like on the wrong chain, kind of like she had pre-voted for the wrong chain.
Yeah.
So I wonder if anyone else can say that that one's completable. So for Bob and Charlie, oh yeah, and Dave, these guys actually all have G in the same spot. None of them have the condition that E is strictly an ancestor of G, so it's definitely not that.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them have the case that it's impossible for descendants to have a supermajority. Oh, yes, they do. No, Bob and Charlie both know that no descendant of block 4 will ever have a supermajority in C1, in the set C1, because Bob and Charlie can themselves never move their pre-commits further down the chain.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that means for all 3 of Alice, Bob, and Charlie, round 1 just became completable.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe they're ready. So I think these 2 guys at least are ready to start round 2. Alice isn't because she hasn't pre-committed in round 1 yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so let's see what Alice is supposed to pre-commit on. Oh yeah, pre-commit for just, oh wow, that's interesting. So she's supposed to pre-commit for G even though she knows it's not going to be correct anymore. Okay. Whoops. Alice can pre-commit for block 3, even though it will never be in the chain. All right. Oh, Jay, I just saw you posted that. Is Bruno about to join us?
Yeah, he was asking in the computational calculi group.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'll stop the share there. I think that's probably a good amount of Casper, or a good enough of Grandpa stuff for today.
Yeah, I feel a lot better after today.